Hello and welcome into the third and final day here at the HGC Eastern Clash here in Taipei, Taiwan, where we've had fierce competition throughout the first 2 days. And unfortunately, we've had to send home 4 representatives thus far from Southeast Asia, Taiwan, and China. However, we are left with 4 remaining teams, 3 from Korea, 1 from China, with L5, Tempest, MVP Black, and CE making it to the final day. I am Jay Howe, and joining me at the desk this afternoon is going to be Wolf and Trixler. And guys, expectations were a little bit varied coming in, but things are getting a little crazy. What can we expect here on the final day?
I wouldn't even say expectations were really varied. I think the expectations were wholly MVP Black goes through this tournament, dominates, wins the winner bracket, gets that extra point going to the grand finals. Everyone's saying MVP Black the most dominant team. There were questions coming in until the Chinese teams didn't come with full rosters, and when we found out there were visa problems and the teams weren't going to be at their full potential, everyone was still saying MVP Black comes in and smashes. But right now, in terms of expectations going to this, MVP Black did not meet those expectations. They're actually now considered the worst of the 3 Korean teams in this tournament.
Yeah, things have definitely adjusted for me in terms of who I thought was going to win the tournament now and to who I think can win the tournament. Also, someone just to shout out real quick is CE. CE comes in with a replacement player, and yet they've been defying expectations. It seems to be the word that we're going to be using today, as they've made it to the top 4, and now they'll have a chance to play MVP Black later. But for now, our top 4 teams right now all have a chance here to contest for that grand finals.
Well, guys, before we get to the grand finals, we got to see the process in which they're going to get there with the prize pool. We're going to take a look at what's at stake, as a $100,000 prize pool is on the line for our teams this weekend, and a lot of this is going to be hashed out today. As you can see, the top 4 teams today, they're going to go home with 30, 20, 15, or 10. And guys, aside from this, when you're representing Korea, it's not always about how much money's up there. Money's nice, but it's about the pride and the respect that you get from winning.
I mean, we may have our very first L5 Tempest Grand Finals. That could be the first time it's ever happened in Heroes history, so that would be a really cool storyline, because until Fnatic dominated a midseason brawl and also had their run through BlizzCon, we had oftentimes the Asian dominance. It was Edward Gaming back in spring 2016. Then we had Korea versus Korea. People expected Korea versus Korea going into BlizzCon finals. Fnatic defied those expectations. Again, we had the midseason brawl. It was Europe versus Europe. But maybe after this series, after we see maybe the upset Tempest rising to the top, we see Korea challenge Europe again. So I think this is kind of a chapter that we have to look back at as we go into BlizzCon as to how dominant the Korean teams look here and how, of course, Fnatic did at the Western Clash.
Well, speaking of dominance, we're going to see exactly how some of these teams got here. So we're going to take a closer look at the bracket to see how the first 2 days evolved. And guys, right away, that MVP Black versus Deadly Kittens, very first day, it's a 2-0, but that was a close one. It kind of set the tone for this entire tournament, as we can see that Tempest was able to take it down. But Trixler, what kind of things stand out to you when looking at this bracket?
I mean, you were talking about MVP Black versus Deadly Kittens, but I'm looking at the next series, Tempest versus MVP Black. That was quite the series to watch. It was odd in some ways, but also very exciting at the same time. There were matches where it seemed like Tempest wasn't fully there, and then you would go into game number 2, and it's like, wait, MVP Black is kind of thrown in the gauntlet a little bit. It was a back-and-forth series all the way through. If you have one best of 5 to watch this tournament that's already happened, I would definitely recommend that game. I
mean, keep in mind, too, L5 is the only Korean team that's gone through the bracket undefeated. They were able to defeat Soul Torturers 2-0, then take the 3-0 over Team Face Check, which upset over Super Perfect Team. So, when you look at how well TFC performed, that looks to be a strong result for L5. MVP Black not only dropping a map to Soul Torturers, but looking vulnerable in several of those games. So Black looking very vulnerable now in this top 4.
It's definitely something that we'll all keep our eye on. And that's, one thing in particular that kind of last night, I get to watch the next match, and then if you guys missed the game 1 of the final set last night, CE went down. I mean, the core rush.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very end of the night, I mean, that was one way to just say, hey, look, this is our finale for the night before we head into our final day. I mean, we've seen some pretty exciting action. But speaking of action, we're going to take a look at the schedule for the rest of the day so you guys can see how this will play out, as we are going to kick things off in the winners bracket finals with Tempest and L5. And then we will see that matchup between CE and MVP Black. And guys, we talked a little bit about the bracket, but between Tempest and L5 and CE MVP Black, what can you guys expect here to start the day?
For Tempest L5, I expect a 5-game series. The last time these two teams matched up was all the way back in, I believe, week 1 of HGC Korea, and it went to 5 games. That was when Tempest, I felt like, wasn't firing on all cylinders as a team. Sign versus Hooligan is going to be a very important matchup for me today, and I hope to see all 5 games.
And in terms of hero pool and how well they've been performing at this specific tournament, I think you actually have to give the edge to Hooligan, and it's crazy to a 2-time world champion player Sign to actually give the advantage to the rookie player. The player is playing in his very first international event. He's getting the heroes he wants. He's played the Diablo, he showed us the Tyrael, and Sign feels a little bit pigeonholed on the Muradin. Sign is forcing Hong Kono, the main DPS, to play the Tyrael instead when he's playing the Tracer, and I think in that matchup, Hooligan has the edge.
Thing is, though, there is the X factor that everyone has to be talking about, H82, who has been surprising this tournament, and I love everything this kid puts out.
You mean Artanis?
Artanis is definitely the tip of that iceberg.
Well, guys, we're going to take a closer look at Tempest here as we start the day. Well, there was our roster of Tempest, and guys, there's H82 that we just heard about, Trixler talking about. Obviously, we saw that one God tier swap yesterday. We've seen these different play styles coming out, including something like a Tyrande that we saw yesterday, things like that. Wolf, it seems like this team, they have the championship medal in their history. Is this a new team that finally is coming into form that we might have expectations to be champions again?
I mean, you do have to look at this team and remember that the same roster that won 2016 summer back at DreamHack in Sweden is not the same roster you look at now. We saw some of the feels from that roster. It's Hong Kono on the Greymane using the old Dami build, the Tyrael play we saw with the 7-sided strike, with the attempts to grab heroes, with the Holy Ground, the force walls we didn't see when the 7-sided strike was used because Duck's not on the roster. It feels like if you want to make the comparison to that championship team, you can't do it yet because that was a very dominant time for Korea where we really don't see that same dominance today. And I feel like if you want to look at this roster, you have to remember the players here. The new player, Hong Kono, H82. Will he get caught? He was punished several times by Falstad in the previous series. He can be a great strength for the team, but in that solo lane, he could also be a weakness if he overextends.
Yeah, when I look at this team, I think about how stable they are as a roster, not compared to L5 and Infi Black, but what the deciding factor has been this entire weekend is there has always been a moment where the games they win, they have one big play that happens, whether it be the H82 on that Artanis, or the Oriole from Hyde, bring out the detainment strikes, or even Sign when he played Muradin on Sky Temple and had that one massive read on the opposing team, jumped in and grabbed the boss. If they can each get those playmaking moments from their players, I can see them moving forward against L5.
Well, they will have their opposition ahead of them as we will take a closer look at L5 going into this matchup against Tempest. There is Swoy. He looks a little bit more lively today. You know, normally he's that calm, relaxed guy, just kind of lounging back in his chair, but he's got smiles today, knowing he's in the winner's bracket. Has that, if they lose, they still have their way back. But guys, L5, oh no, everybody's trying the Smexy. Oh, he already blinked. You can't win. But Wolf, L5 here, obviously, you know, they've been at the top of Korea for a while. They've dipped just a little bit, but they find themselves here in the winner's bracket. What can we expect?
I feel like when we were going into this tournament, their biggest goal was revenge, to defeat MVP Black. The ones that beat them in Eastern Clash last time defeated them in regular season going into part 1 of Phase 2. But remember, MVP Black was defeated by L5 in the mid-season brawl. L5 got the 3rd place over the 4th in that matchup. But L5 now favored over Black. I feel like they could take kind of a time to breathe a sigh of relief. They saw Black's weaknesses. Tempest as well didn't look very strong. They didn't look dominant in the series against Black. The win was a win in itself, right? It was a win in the series, but it wasn't a sweep. So L5 probably looks at themselves saying, well, we're the only team that's undefeated in this tournament. this is an important moment for us to take the title we couldn't get in Eastern Clash #1.
Yeah, they really felt like the roster's coming together. Talking to both Hooligan and, of course, SCSC yesterday, they just mentioned how it feels like this team has finally found their element, and they're keeping up with it. I mean, we saw Taronda from them. They're currently undefeated in this tournament. When you pull out Taronda and you look that decisive, your team's killing it right now.
A lot of it was kind of the Hooligan play. You talked about this leading up to these intros and how much we've seen from Hooligan when we talked about these teams at the start of the day. Wolf, what has his kind of aggression meant for this team on a team that's been more about macro focus?
I mean, it's really cool because you have this extra factor now, and Noblesse was always the one who pushed the limits of what Muradin could do. You think about Noblesse, you almost see Muradin's face instead of Noblesse's face, right? But this is a new history that L5 is trying to write with these new players, Hooligan and SDE. And if you're a fan of international heroes, you like international events, but you don't watch HGC Korea or you didn't watch Super League, you haven't been following Korean heroes since 2015, you might look at these players, Hooligan, SD, who are they? Where did they come from? They were on several teams since 2015. These players have been looking for the big shot. They've been looking for their opportunity to go to BlizzCon for a year and a half now, at least both of them. SDE, of course, the former StarCraft 2 pro, has been playing in esports for his entire career. Since 2010, 7 years later, this is his opportunity now to go to his first Grand Finals. The same with Hooligan on an international stage, not just at the Super League Finals, not just at the top of HGC Korea, but looking at setting big expectations, going into BlizzCon, winning in front of a cheering crowd. That's what these players have been playing esports for their whole lives. And now for these two, SDE and Hooligan, they have their best chance yet to get that Grand Finals.
Their best chance for their big shot. And we're going to find out where they're going to make their big shot as we're going to take a look at the map picks and bans and see where we're going to kick things off today, as we see that Tempest has banned Braxis, of course, with Korea, but L5 banning out Battlefield of Eternity, taking off that small battleground. It looks like we're going to be sending us to Tomb of the Spider Queen for game #1 with the L5 pick.
Opening up with the battlegrounds where you need that wave clear. One thing that I do wonder if we'll see from these teams is that Tassadar Tracer. Both of them have very strong Tracer players that can really pull out all the stops. Also, L5, they haven't been focusing on Illidan as most of the other teams here in this tournament. So will that become a factor in this matchup?
I think there's a high chance it will, but not necessarily on Tomb of the Spider Queen. This is the map where L5 shines with the 4-man rotations. I mean, they absolutely crushed with the Taronda comp. They said, oh, you picked Stukov against us on Tomb? And if you go back and watch that VOD, if you're a fan of the Taiwanese team, you will be a bit sad, as it was domination from L5. We'll see if they can repeat that here heading into Tomb.
Well, guys, this is going to kick off our day. Tomb of the Spider Queen, game #1 in the winners bracket finals. Tempest taking on L5, and Tempest starting things off here with a ban on Uther.
See the Oriole ban to follow things up. We'll see if Tempest wants to follow the MVP Black method here. Grab the Genji, they will. And with the Uther ban here, he's still available. Had it been the Genji, Oriole would have probably seen these Stitches lock in. And so how is L5 going to try to lock this down? The Uther was already banned, so they can't grab that as their answer in terms of shutting down mobility. Will we see the Stitches coming in? We've seen that pick-oriented comp from L5 on this map. We've even seen them run the ETC. So their way of tackling this map is not always the wave clear that you mentioned, which is very strong, but instead to try to punish the teams that are using their wave clear to get structural damage and go in for the power slide-ins, those hook attempts with the follow-up CC. It's going to be Greymane, though, instead, so they're at least heading down that wave clear path for now.
And Trixer, I want to ask you about that, because obviously Rhaegar's a strong pickup for Swoy, and I feel like that almost takes it away from the likes of Genji, because you tend to fall back to another safe option of Malfurion. You need to have consistent heals for heroes with that low health pool. Do you think that Rhaegar might be a little bit more of a power play, since we've seen teams try and run that Rhaegar with Genji more often?
Yeah, certainly. You're talking about the deflect and the ancestor healing. It's almost guaranteed to be able to pull it off. So it is a great pickup here, especially with it being Tomb of the Spider Queen. You get your own ability to clear out those waves, and of course it bolsters well with Greymane, so not a bad pickup whatsoever here for L5. But yes, the question is, what will Tempest move into? Suddenly you don't have that Ariel, that hide that we've been seeing, the Attainment Strikes, which is amazing on this battleground. And will the Malfurion be the next follow-up for them? It's certainly a possibility, but I wouldn't mind them holding off here, moving into their tanks, and they're going to go ahead and do so. Pick up that Leoric and that Li Ming.
Leoric, Li Ming, we saw this burst damage and CC coming out from Leoric's in Tombs, but it was by, it was by the same team, or sorry, against the same team they face now, against the Stukov play. Sure, when you look at what L5 has, they have heroes that are vulnerable to those Entombs that could get crushed there by the Li Ming combos, but feels like it's a bit early to be grabbing onto this hero, prioritizing it so highly, and We'll see. I mean, remember, this was against Stukov. This was later on with the Tyrande pick. That's something I don't expect to see, especially as a solo support, but we'll see what Tempest has in mind.
Yeah, you know, once you lock in that Leoric, you know that's going to be your solo. You need to have that strong warrior. Then you need to have that full support there. So no Tyrande probably this game unless things get really wild. But now we're heading into the second ban phase. You see a lot of the damage already locked in on the side of Tempest. It's up to L5 to ban somebody. When you look at this composition, do they focus supports? Do they focus that warrior? Will we see the Malfurion ban, or are they afraid of potentially the Stukov coming out to counter their potential threat?
Yeah, if they have a warrior they're scared of, and it's actually Diablo's going to be hovered over, this has actually been a massive ban that's been popping up a lot here at the Eastern Clash, especially from the Koreans. They seem to really want to stay away from that hard engage that can be very effective around the turn-in point. So Diablo gets banned out, and Tassadar will be the answer back from Tempest. So on the side of L5, they now will be looking for their own warrior.
Feels like L5 with the ban here on Diablo want to shut down something that can stop high mobility. Greymane is decent mobility, Rhaegar does as well, but they might be thinking of something very quick that they can zip around the map with, like a Zeratul, but that hasn't really been prioritized by the Korean teams in this tournament. Another thing to keep in mind too is the lack of Malfurion ban. Feels like they're very comfortable with dealing with the Malfurion, even though it's the obvious choice for Tempest. Hyde's known to play a good Kharazim. You don't really want to unlock the potential Hyde Kharazim. You've got Leoric to lock somebody down to get some 7-sided strike value. So I like this idea of saying, all right, we'll give you the opportunity to play Muradin because you're not going to have burst heals with that for the Genji.
It winds up being that Muradin.
They also deny Sign's best warrior here in the Muradin, so I'm liking the draft here so far for L5. It feels like they're just trying to take the slow and safe approach. When you look at these 4 heroes, you don't think, wow, what an incredible lineup, but you think this is very safe, and we've denied a lot of the picks that Tempest were looking for.
Well, we've seen the Dahaka pickup, and I wondered who would be that solo laner. We've kind of seen this rise of Dahaka a little bit lately. It is almost mirroring that of what we've seen a lot in the Western region, in particular, you know, in Europe, so things like that. But Tempest here, obviously needing to lock in that warrior. We've seen a little bit of ETC as of late. It seems like that is there with the potential, but is it maybe going to be a safer pick with the Anub'arak to try and get the Cocoon onto the Rhaegar for hard engage?
I don't know about the Anub'arak. I feel like, and this may sound a little critical, Anub'arak isn't played very well by Sign. He misses out on a lot of the opportunities. He gets focused down pretty heavily, and whenever he burrow charges out, he never seems to actually attempt to dodge out any skill shots coming his way. I think I would prefer that ETC. He looks much more effective on it.
Yeah, I mean, the ETC here with the Kharazim is something we've seen so many times at a Tempest in the past, and it is going to be ETC Kharazim. So this is, again, what we saw them attempt to run yesterday and fail. We wanted to see those power slides to isolate a target, to have the 7-sided strike, pick off that target. Now they have Entomb as well as a tool. We saw Tassadar in the draft last time, and the idea was we were thinking it was going to be the Force Wall to help lock those targets out, like Duck Duck did on the old Tempest roster. They don't have the Tassadar, but they have a similar tool here. They have a different type of wall, which in some cases can be used vertically, like a Tassadar Force Wall, to get those picks, but it didn't work out for them yesterday. We'll see if they can make these 4-man rotations work today instead.
The thing I like about the Tempest draft is that yesterday we saw early aggression, and ETC is one of those warriors that you can step out in line. It makes easy skill shots for Li Ming, and then you'll have that Genji that's going to be roaming that can help out either Leoric in the bottom lane to deal with the Dahaka or potentially get the picks here. But on the same side, L5, they're not too shabby themselves, having the Greymane, having the lockdown with Muradin, and now they have a chance to lock in a bit more damage to see what their early game is going to be.
Yeah, I would like a little bit more damage, maybe some form of CC, just to have an extra tool to handle that ETC mosh pit that can be coming in.
It's
the
Tychus
Tychus with the grenade. There it is.
Yeah, the grenade is a great tool. Also, it gives a lot of extra wave clear. Tychus has decent long-term team fighting with the Rhaegar as well. Such a great target for Ancestral. And we talk about how Rhaegar is so sustain heavy. It's something that all the Korean teams have been talking about in interviews, and I like the pick. It's a very traditional Korean pick when you have to not necessarily have the hyper carry. You're looking for that second DPS. You either look for the Tychus or the Li Ming. With Li Ming already picked, the Tychus was the obvious choice.
Tychus great against Genji as well. Whenever he comes in with that Dragon Blade, drop down the Odin, Siege with the Tomb of the Spider Queen, make sure to use those Web Weavers. Just a great lineup here for L5.
I'll say this. Yesterday I was talking to Gilly backstage. We saw the exact same concept come out. The one thing that Odin doesn't have, guys, is that grenade.
Yeah.
And we saw the discipline from our ETC player yesterday that the minute that moment happened, they went right in, and it's like, well, this is free. You don't have the same type of interrupts as we are now underway in our winners bracket finals here. Game number 1, Tempest taking on L5.
Of course, L5 will spawn over here on the red side of the map. The favorites going into this best of 5 in our winners finals. dropping out their sprays here. And of course, their opponents in blue, they are Tempest over here spawning on the left side of the map. Both of these teams have the potential to rotate and get picks, but you have to think that Tempest is going to look to dominate the early game. Look at Lockdown. He's already dashing out of the gates here at the get-go.
It's like a sprinter. It's like, I'm off the blocks first. I'm going to come out here and try and get some vision, but he just kind of falls back, having a little bit of fun on the hero. Wolf, this winner's bracket finals, I think everybody, including Tempest themselves, anticipated that it would be that MVP Black versus L5. L5 said it. MVP Black said it. But here we are. Things are getting a little bit crazy as we head into game 3.
And remember, look at what we're seeing here from L5 already. The respect here, staggering the minions just slightly so that Signs power slides have to go a bit deeper if they want to deny that experience. L5 can soak that free XP a little bit safer now. Just a small thing, right? But L5 respects this as a very Korean thing to do against the ETC pick on this map. Prep the minion wave so that when the blue side is get to your side, you can use your range, use your Tychus and Greymane to grab that wave of EXP without making yourself vulnerable to the ETC power slide. L5 knows that with this composition for Tempest, the early game is not theirs, and they need to respect it, and so far, so good on that regard.
Wolf, and I want to talk about the ETC in particular. Oftentimes, you can be a little bit critical of picking block party as SDE. Sign goes in for the power slide, the block, but he went in a little bit too far as we've got a 1-for-1 trade here to start our game. But those block charges are eaten up really quick. Yes, it kind of helps out your team, but a map like Tomb of the Spider Queen, you might have wondered if Progrock might have been a better choice here for ETC.
Yeah, I mean, it could have given some extra sustainability for sure, especially when you're dealing with Karazim. Everyone's going to be grouped up anyways, but as you see a near pick there in the top lane. I feel like L5 is handling the pick well. And sure, you want to get picks as Tempest in the early game, but if L5 is making them trades, then L5 is getting further ahead here because their comp scales better into the mid game. And they are just slightly behind in gems carried, but they can now, with this pick, grab the EXP, use the wave clear advantage they have on the top lane to get a slight EXP lead, as you guys could see to the top there.
I love when you can just kind of roam as Murden. You know you're going the stacking Stormbolt talent at once. You just find a spot, wait for them to come through, go ahead and smash Q. Really stack that up for the late game to give that control. So the hooligan aggression, the hooligan roaming, it also plays that anchor for this team to make sure to prevent some of those ganks with this gank squad of Tempest.
Exactly, and every time you get the Stormbolt to prevent that gank, you get that extra stack. It feels like it's a win into a win, you know. In this early game, if this were a game of dodgeball, L5's not trying to throw the ball, but trying to catch the ball that's thrown at them from Tempest, and outs and out, right? So that's the idea here, is to try to catch these. Another stack coming in here right away for Hooligan. And so far, L5 could be very comfortable with what they've been able to accomplish. They even have more gems turned in despite having the lower possession rate currently at 21 to 38.
Well, we saw the rotation there just a moment ago, Wolf, of the Leoric, who's moving into that Royal Focus build, and we saw his rotation up, but the power slide, though, is going in onto a few members. That's going to be very difficult to take down Hooligan as SC, and now Zhang Ha's making use of that Brush Stalker, trying to get a pick, misses the tongue, hits the minion, not able to get the kill.
A little bit disjointed fight for L5. They could have tried to focus Lockdown, and it seemed like half the members were on that path. The other half were trying to take out Sign, and as a result, they both escape here. Bit of a sloppy engage for Tempest, but L5 not fully coordinated on the response. And remember, no dedicated shot caller on this roster. Sometimes in split-second moments like this where you can make the decision, do we get the Genji, do we get the ETC? But you can see there's a little bit of a disjointed response, so something to look out for in this series.
Hong Kong is like, I'd like to turn these in, but never mind. So he's just going to walk out of there, and then Hooligan comes in, takes a little bit of damage, and he jumps right back out. And the whole thing is going to be about the Leoric play. You know, the Royal Focus build isn't too bad. Once you get that duration, you get that bonus damage off of your swing, giving you significant wave clear. But what it adds is that flexibility. That four-man gank squad we talked about, it allows them to go and look for those kills while Leoric takes care of 2 out of the 3 lanes.
And once we get to level 10, that's when we're going to see the big spike for those ganks. You know, that's when we're going to have the Entomb. We're going to have the 7-sided that this comp is designed to use. That's why they went into the Karazim pick over the Malfurion. Sure, the silence is going to be great in a straight-up fight. Could even totally ruin what Rhaegar is trying to accomplish with the Ancestrals, but when we see this pick comp really come online, is going to be 10. That's why L5 just wants to stay even, make sure they're not behind when that comes online. It looks like we're going to see the first turn in coming in here for Tempest. L5 wants to deny. Actually, looks like 2 gems still required.
Both teams here with enough gems. They're trying to see who can get this. It's the battle of wills. You force the response bottom. Rhaegar's trying to defend top. We can see them all over the minimap right now, frantically trying to get that turn in.
This is such a huge moment for L5. If they get the turn in, they will be able to make sure they get 10 first. But Swoy, so incredibly low. What a great grenade there, but it's still not going to save him. Again, they turn this around, though. Jungle wants to get that tongue grab onto lockdown. He's headed in. Honkono's trying to block him. Looks like Hyde is going to be the target instead. He gets blocked, but still, Tempest gets the first turn in.
Wolf, so far, we've seen the aggression come out of Tempest, but it's almost over-aggression because so far, both of these team fights that have involved kills, they've been trade so far. But one thing you can't trade in this game is that you get the Web Weaver turn in. It's only for one team, and that's going to be Tempest right now to get things underway.
They have a decent amount of poke with the Li Ming. It's not the greatest siege comp of all time, and they didn't win the lanes. So necessarily knock down every wall for L5, as they're already working on this with SC. But this comp will push them towards the faster level 10, which can snowball this game for Tempest. They get 10, they get the Entomb, they get the 7-sided, the Mosh Pit, they get those picks we were talking about, with L5 having not very many answers. Cleanse is used early, they're not going to have that response. Then they get the second Web Weaver turn in, try to parlay that into a third one. So this is absolutely critical for Tempest. This comp needed to get the first turn in because it's so aggressive in the early game. It's the stronger early game comp. So objective number 1 here for Tempest was a success.
Oh, well, they found themselves signed, but they don't have the requisite follow-up damage as Greymane's dealing with the Web Weavers on the bottom. And Wolf, you get this early turn in. Sometimes you get value, sometimes you don't get as much. And you look at the experience advantage, it's going to be impossible for Tempest to try and snowball this unless they get a magical kill here. But I think L5 did a wonderful job defending that push.
Exactly. And remember we talked about how they had very little leads in the lanes. They didn't have any ammo really knocked down, so they weren't able to put a direct damage to the forts. Didn't get even all of the walls. As you can see here, the mid wall fully standing right now. And the key is to get 10 first, and I don't know if this push got them as close as they would have liked. Now L5 has the counter push, so even if Tempest has 10 slightly earlier, which is a big question mark here, it's not going to be the lead they were looking for. They didn't get the back-to-back Web Weaver snowball they were looking for with the ETC comp, with the ganks they were looking for. And for L5, this is a great win with that solid defense. And part of it comes back to this mercenary camp that was taken, that revealed so much of the map and also put so much pressure on Tempest, allowing that turn in.
All right, Wolf. Mosh Pit is locked in. Karazim holding on to his. Both these teams have picked up their level 10, so we're going to see, is Tempest, are they going to be willing to try and dive past this, look for that fight, look for that engage? If we see the Odin come out, I talked about it earlier, that's one of your interrupt options. We do see isolation as well from Dahaka, so if needed, but right now, Sign under assault as these Web Weavers pushing mid.
Ooh, and we are going to see Palm instead of 7-sided strike. The problem with this, though, is sure it gives you the extra protection, but it's not going to empower a Dragon Blade. It basically ruins it as you get into stasis. There's so much time to react if you're L5, so not really the best one to pick here, I feel, in this situation for the comp they have for team fighting. Great cleanse here onto Hooligan to save him here as the rotation back does occur. But it is a solid defense for Tempest. This game is very even still, Jay-How, and the comp, remember, we keep talking about how Tempest had the early game advantage. They should have been able to parlay that into something further. When L5 got that turn in, I thought the game might have been whisked away from Tempest, but they also had a solid defense. They did not overextend. Let's see if this Palm proves me wrong, though, as really, with Hyde and the ETC, we almost never see him pick it. And, you know, maybe that protection will end up proving to be valuable, but so far it's a rare pick, and it's an unusual one that I don't think is going to work out for them as well as the 7-sided could have.
I tell you what, it feels like both teams are searching for not just the right moment, but the perfect moment to try and engage, to try and capitalize on one slip-up. And it's almost asking for a big slip-up as both teams now have enough gems for turn in, but this might be the slip up as the Mosh Pit is going to go down, but the isolation is going to get him out of there, and Soy not able to survive. He's going to be the first one down.
It was a sloppy Ancestral too. You know, he couldn't use it as early as he would have liked to. Couldn't cleanse himself. That's not how it works. The Palm here is actually just going to be self-protection for Hyde. Ends up working out in the end. Sure, they get the trade onto Honkono, but excellent Mosh control here. Sign on an old favorite hero of his. Has the Mosh onto the Rhaegar specifically. Had they not had the isolation for the interrupt there, things could have been even worse. So now this is going to be the second Web Weaver turn in for Tempest. It's back-to-back for them. and or sorry, it's not back-to-back for them. They deny the back-to-back for L5, and it's off of this great team fight, the usage of the mosh pit. And the palm, let's continue to watch. Let's see how many more times this is a very epic palm where we see the Hyde saves himself, where he saves Honkono potentially to turn these fights.
You know, and I tell you what, sometimes you think mosh pit, 2-minute cooldown, you don't want to just use it on one hero, but sometimes that's kind of how you can engage. You try and get that second hero, and you just try and initiate with that, force out these clutch responses. And so Sign there, getting that initiation, I think really helped them in the fight. And Wolf, we talked about the siege potential. With that disintegrate, you can see they're just pressuring there as Hooligan forcing a dwarf toss away, but he's in trouble right now. He's got 47 gems. Soy trying to come over. He gets the totem down.
He has to use Avatar.
Yeah, that is a big win. I mean, he's just trying to marginally disrupt what's going on the back line. Instead, he overcommits. And speaking of overcommitting, SDE, you can see SC getting in there, blocking the magic missiles to keep his teammate alive.
We're seeing just such excellent dive here from Tempest when they have the small advantage. They know Avatar's pop. They know Hooligan's reduced to low health. They can push this forward. They can dive hard. And if L5 tries to fight them, they have the heroic advantage. They can take that fight. And if they don't respond to the fight, then they just get these forts. Look at this wall here, nearly catching SC. A great juke there. He may go down regardless here as the fort has fallen, but Jungha is coming for the flank. They want to counter engage here, JL.
He's trying, and Hooligan's going in deep as well. Remember, Avatar's not available, so he's got to be careful on how hard he wants to go in. And Tempest more than willing to walk away. Wolf, I look at the gem count. They just had their turn in. You look at the side, yes, there's enough for L5, but if Tempest can play this correctly, they can get that back-to-back turn in we were just talking about.
Yeah, and I feel like they just barely didn't overextend. They pushed this to its maximum limits with that last push, but unfortunately they weren't able to get in position to turn in. Everyone had to go home and tap, heal up. They weren't willing to risk the denial of the turn in. They already have the structural lead. They're 2 forts up right now, so if they can at least prevent one of these forts from being destroyed with the defense here, and the lead already in lane that they have from their own Webweaver push, this isn't going to be so bad for them. So instead of risking the fight, they take the safer approach.
They definitely take the safer approach, and Wolf, to me it just feels like both teams openly respecting each other, not just in the way that they talk about each other, recognizing how good their teams are, but in their gameplay, understanding that your team has all the potential in the world to turn the fight against you. The aggression that you were able to showcase against some of the weaker teams in here, it's not going to be here, especially when you find yourself in the winners bracket finals. It's just you have to show your opponent respect, and both these teams, you know, we have 8 total kills, but it feels still very tense in their approach.
Ooh, SC has dove way too deep. This is not the respect they were looking for. They have the cleanse. That's why he wanted to go so deep. Jungha with the flank here. Sick Ancestral does go off, but Jungha misses the tongue grab. Now they're fighting underneath the fort. They are getting the aggro. Jungha is slowed here. I don't know if he's going to be able to get out. We do see the chase now is on. HA2's burning Hooligan out. He can't actually come in here for the peel. Oh, the Entomb just barely misses, but this is still a 1 fight for Tempest.
Talk about getting that extra movement speed out of the bush there. Dahaka just is like creeping on his tail, just tickling him as he goes out of there. The orb just missed, the Entomb just missed. Jungha getting out of there, lucky to be alive.
And what did we say? We said Tempest basically had to just make sure that both of their forts did not go down. L5 wanted to push the issue on the top fort. They pushed that lane hard. They didn't respect the ETC. SC was super deep in. Had the cleanse not been ready, that would have been a pick, and maybe we'd even have a keep potentially down for this next Webweaver. But Tempest knew they could have the defensive engagement. They know L5 doesn't have a strong dive composition to force the issue. So all they knew was, let's hold on to these gems. Let's not take the bad fight, lose the gems, and then maybe give L5 a back-to-back turn in. Let's take the defensive engage, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, they're trying to take advantage of that Leoric, getting that extra damage off that, going forward. Hyde going into that cleansing touch. Now has the cleanse available. You can see every time he dashes, you'll see that available to them. They've got mid and top lane pushed in quite a bit right now, Wolf. They're trying to get keep wall. Do you think they'll be aggressive enough to try and get that pick to go further?
I think if the orbs connect with SDE again like they have been so well, then we're going to see the Genji dive. Lockdown's going to look for that pick. If that pick happens, then they go for the keep wall. Otherwise, the keep. I think otherwise we just look at this and say they're satisfied to take 2 keep walls. They have decent poke with Gleaming. It's not as crazy as the siege that L5 has with the Tychus and the Greatman. It's not the amazing wave clear that L5 has. So without the pick, they're just going to try to grab keep walls. They're going to go for the 3rd one here, down in the bot lane. And L5, remember, they don't have a dive comp. They don't have heavy engage. And Hooligan, he's not the noblesse engager on the Muradin that we've seen for L5 in the past. He's a more passive player in general. This is his first international event, so he's not going to be the one to make the plays. It's actually been Jungha who's been the engager with the flanks, with the potential tongue grabs that have almost gotten them some wins in team fights. But L5 just has to accept they have to let those keep walls go. But the main worry was losing the keep, and they at least staved that off.
You know, and I think you bring up a good point, is that getting those keep walls, it just furthers your experience advantage. And if you play towards 20, you play a little bit passive there, you sustain until then, it opens up the map, you get the 20 tier advantage, you'll have that additional turn in, or you can get there around 20, as we see the heavy engage, and H82 gets absolutely deleted there by Tychus with the bigger they are. Isolation, nice cleanse though, onto Sign to keep him alive, but they are continuing the pressure.
Yeah, the cleansing touch here, keeping him alive, so well done, but that was such a good engage onto H82. It's just trying to slow this down so they can prevent the turn-ins. There's going to be one more potential attempt here, but it looks like, as we see, Tempest is going to back off. They can toss out a few more of these shurikens, but I think that is going to be about it. L5 needed this turn-in so desperately, so H82's overextension works out so well for them. You talk about chipping away, getting the EXP lead. You were talking about this, getting those keep walls is playing the 20 game, and for L5, they have this comeback EXP they can grab from the bot fort and also the top fort, which is already basically destroyed. That could get them the EXP lead that they so desperately need. A failed turn in here might have been the end for them in terms of this game with the keep pressure that would have been granted to Tempest.
I agree, and I tell you what, Wolf, I'm waiting for this next big mosh pit. I feel like it's right on the horizon, is that we saw the isolation, he wasn't able to land it, and we see Hooligan and Changha going in deep there. H82 recognizing he doesn't want to get locked down. You are unstoppable while you are in that Wraith Walk form. So he's like, look, I'm going to hit this before you hit me because I saw what happened last time and I don't want to die again. Trait value or not.
Trait value or not. And let's see what they can accomplish with this Webweaver push. The top one is dealt with already, so the top fort is still going to go down here, but we see a nice cleansing touch here, but he doesn't actually want to use the palm. He uses it there at the end, so L5 does bait that out. Will be the double we're looking for. Again, this is not going to catch them up in EXP directly, especially with all the soak we're seeing in mid, but it closes the gap. Look at it. It was once a half-level lead. Now it's about a third, a fourth a level lead here for Tempest. And this is, again, just off of the fact that they admitted they knew they were going to lose the bot fort. They actually saved the top one. They sent lockdown up there to clear it. Yeah. But they got EXP in all 3 lanes, whereas L5 only got the fort kill in the bot lane. They will, of course, secure this, as you say, eventually. But Tempest maintains that experience lead.
They're coming in hot, though. I mean, we see Tempest right now recognizing, they're like, look, you overstepped your boundaries. We know we had to clear that out, but they weren't able to get there in time. Wolf, the gem advantage slightly in favor of Tempest. I got a feeling it's going to come down to a team fight. It's going to come down to who can get 20 tier, who can force the aggression, who can get that pick to open it up to get that next turn in to really start to grab control of this map, because right now it's basically dead even. It's back and forth.
Yeah, and there's no direct objective because neither team has exactly enough gems to turn in. Tempest is so close, but what L5 wants to do is at least get some of their gems turned in, so if they lose a disastrous fight, it's not like they're going to lose all possession because they had so many carried. They're just trying to get a little bit done here, but there's no direct objective, which is why L5 decides to back off and get the Merc camp that was available on red side. The camp for Tempest, of course, already taken, so they didn't have that opportunity. And this is a game of just, let's poke a little bit, let's not give them any edges as we both kind of race to 20. And that's where Dahaka is going to get a lot of extra value, as you can see down in the bot lane, building up that EXP, trying to catch up. They have the Knight camp mid, so this is going to force the reaction from Tempest. This gives more pressure, which allows L5 to turn in. They're so close now, just 10 gems away from that next Webweaver.
Well, if I'm sitting over here on the edge of my seat, man, like I'm waiting, I'm like, you know, this is going to come down to a team fight. It's going to come down to 20. Like something's going to happen and it's going to be explosive, whether it's that one pick, whether it's that big mosh. I mean, I keep saying it, but right now you can tell these teams are unwilling to hard commit to a fight, unwilling to just dive right in and take control of it. They're trying to find other ways.
They're looking for Jungha.
Yeah, they have Jungha, but he's going to get out of there.
They forced the brush stock, though, so he's actually very far back. Look at the minimap. Look at how far away L5 is from denying a turn-in right now. Looks like they're just going to set up to defend with H82 turning in. That is going to be blue Webweavers here. They knew they couldn't contest without 20. They knew Jungha had already used the brush stock. He wasn't going to be able to flank. He was down there in the bot lane taking the extra risk to try to soak for 20, but he failed to do so. Now, this Webweaver push, all the walls were at least damaged, mostly destroyed from the last push we saw from Tempest. So this is threatening directly keeps. Look at how Tempest spreads out, preps the wave so the Webweavers come out as close as possible to the keeps. And again, L5 not willing to challenge, not against the ETC comp here, not against the Entomb comp of Tempest, just trying to soak for 20.
It's a scary prospect right now. We see Karazim holding on to his, but more importantly, ETC finally locked in his 20 already. A bit surprising there. He's going with a bolt. He's going to look for that bolt engage, try and get that mosh pit, try and get something going here. Dahaka trying to defend that top lane, mid keep, under assault. SD defending bottom. If you give up just the mid keep here, it's probably the most advantageous. It's not the boss lane. It's not that bottom lane that can have siege giants push in. This is the safest lane if you're going to give up a keep, as we see Odin has been popped.
Okay, Odin's been popped here. Here comes Chunga for the flank. The flank he couldn't have earlier. Big red button here utilized, but Tempest is going to get the disengage. But again, L5 saves the keep for now. There's so much dive potential here for Tempest. If they can bolt in, if they get both the Muradin and the Rhaegar, it's basically a win for the Mosh Pit here. Cleanse is used already on Sign. He's very low. The chase is on. Sick bolt there, actually, or orb, sorry, to deny the mounting of Hooligan. SC wants to go in.
That knockback there, big red button still a thing, not able to connect with any targets, and SC still being aggressive. We see H82, the isolation is going to miss there on H82, but Hooligan's not done, but Hyde is continuing to hit every dash. That cleansing touch pickup at 16 right now, Wolf, is just mad value.
So much help for Tempest. But look at what happened. L5 took the most patient approach to this situation as they possibly could have. They save all 3 keeps. They nearly get the engage. The cleansing touch is what allows Tempest to escape, but this is still a big win for L5. Now they have their web weavers. Unfortunately, though, the waves are pushed. Hooligan already used rewind. He used rewind on the chase. They were going deep. They wanted to get the counter pick so that this turn-in would do more than just clear the lanes. They wanted to have this turn-in, threaten to keep walls. They couldn't damage earlier. They wanted to win the game off of this, but unfortunately, because they didn't get those counter picks, this is just a cleanup web weavers for them.
It is an interesting approach, but you've got to get some semblance of map control back, and these web weavers won't necessarily get that crazy value unless you get a pick. But with those lanes being pushed up, but I tell you what, Wolf, we're talking 20-minute web weavers that are pushing. That's pretty significant value. If you spend too much time in one lane, you'll find the other lanes will get punished, because we see that top lane, if you look at the minimap, already pushing out.
Okay, Hooligan's going in with a heavy impact here. Gonna go ahead and pop out the Avatar. Again, these cleansing touches are so good. SC in the back line here. The Dragon Blade not doing massive damage. Look at that Storm Shield coming up. Honkono mounted, unable to do damage, and Lockdown, even though he's doing a decent amount, there's just no follow-up. There's no resets here, and it looks like Tempest is gonna have to disengage here. Odin still available. Overextending here would be a problem. Lockdown just wants to maintain that Dragon Blade. Has he gone too far? He does escape. Close call there.
The Dragon became him for a while there. You can see the hearthing by Lockdown trying to re-engage into this fight. And I told you, if you spend too much time in lanes, Wolf, those web weavers are very punishing. He was forced to hearth back there. We saw on the minimap that top keep took a little bit of damage, and now look at this. This pushed all the way into the keep, and now what looked like it should have been an easy defense now looks like a potential advantage for L5.
Okay, and Tomb does go up here for H82, trying to isolate these members away, using it like a force wall, as we were saying. Has L5 gone too deep? The cleanse is too late here. That's the resets here for Lockdown, and of course, for Li Ming. Look at this. Disintegrate over the wall. Big red button does damage. Look at this palm. Such a good ignore, but it does proc regardless. Lockdown once more here. He's going to chase Chunga. Gets another reset here on the dashes, and this may just be the 4-man wipe. Hands are off the keyboard here for SDE. He knows this game has very likely come to its end.
I mean, just like that, proccing that palm there was one of the worst things that could have happened. Soy's getting caught out here. I mean, it does delay them for just a moment, but this is a 5-man approach onto the core of L5 and Tempest. You know, I talked about the probability that it would come down to that one big team fight, that one big moment. And right there, they punished SC's aggression to try and take that keep value, Wolf. You can see how much people value that, because that ended up costing them the game.
I mean, that was the one fight that ended it all. We could talk about every little piece of what led up to that, but both teams basically played nearly perfectly. Very few overextensions. We saw small advantages with the compositions in the early game for defensive lead for L5, the aggressive ETC comp lead for Tempest in terms of pick potential, and kind of everything went as we expected until that late game fight. It was incredible to see L5 defend their keeps there against the Onslaught and Trick. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this game.
Yeah, it was actually very exciting to watch for multiple reasons. The more I thought about the draft there from Tempest, picking up that ETC later on was such a clever move. Simply for that Greymane Rhaegar pickup in the top right, what control do you actually have against a Genji in terms of CC when you have those first 2 picks? The answer is 0. You don't have any CC. In terms of an actual 1v1, Greymane can do okay, do the last nerfs on Genji, but you don't have the control that you want to have on a Genji. So going down the route, you eventually get that Muradin, and you have to think twice about holding that Stormbolt for ETC Mosh Pit, which means you're not using it on Genji. He gets free there, he opens up, gets a free poke, and you saw it happen many times in that fight.
Many times, and I tell you what, the Kerosium play there was phenomenal. And Trick, we've got a replay here. I think you might have picked this one.
Yeah, this is actually a replay that we see Sign move in right away, jumps on top of Rhaegar. You see that Stormbolt come out, and it does land on the Genji, but that's the only control they have. The Dragon Blade keeps up with it. So what we see from L5 is they attempt to turn around and go straight for Hankano instead. Hankano eventually dies, but they had multiple members chasing him, which allowed for the Genji on the back right side and Sign here on the ETC to control the entire flow of battle.
Yeah, I mean, we saw basically the Ancestral was wasted there onto Hooligan because it was like, well, I might as well try to make this do something for me. But it was the ETC that basically countered any potential dive we had for L5.
I like this Entomb here. Granted, it doesn't hit anyone, and a majority of them in this match didn't actually connect, but it did put SESC in an odd spot, which allowed for Sign to set up for the engage and knockback with that cleanse being slightly too late. When you're at this high level of play, that's going to be a dead hero right away.
Sign was like, he bolted over, pop W, you hit him back with the loudspeaker, knocked him back, and he had that extra range on that, just put him out of position. I think he was goner no matter what. But that bolt pick, he snap locked it. Normally you see it kind of like a reactionary pick. It's like, what do I need in the very last moment? Instead, he went ahead and picked up the bolt and ended up going that way, ended up securing the kill. But Wolf, we're going to be taking a look at our next map battleground that we're going to be going to here as we see after Tomb of the Spider Queen, game number 2, we're heading to another map that looks a little bit purple here, Cursed Hollow.
All right, Cursed Hollow,
Great description, by the way.